Hi, thank you so much for joining this webinar. So my name is Matfess. This is Intelligent App Chronicles, how to build an AI application in less than 2 days. From a quick disclaimer perspective, I just want to call out the fact that you're going to see a lot of images in this presentation. And so they were all created with DALL-E, and please don't sue me. Again, this is the prompt that I used. It was asking to please not violate your content policy, create characters that are in the likeness of particular other characters. So again, if you want to go ahead and play around with that, that's kind of a cool prompt that I built out. Secondly, I just need to say the fact that, Microsoft has been driving innovation faster than ever before. I've been in the Microsoft ecosystem for probably 20 years now, and the speed at which new products, new features, new capabilities are being brought to market is unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And so the reality is, by the time you watch this presentation, the content that I'm sharing might be out of date. So my apologies for that. So from a disclaimer alert perspective, as of January 16th, they should be, for the most part, pretty valid. Okay. So from an agenda perspective, I'm going to do quick intros, tell you who I am. I'm going to talk about Microsoft's AI offerings, going to dive into Copilot Studio, and then going to flip into that healthcare use case that I'm going to help explain what it is, why I built it, why I'm so passionate about it, and then I'll step you through how I built it in case you want to either build something very similar for you and your organization, or if it inspires you to create something that's maybe even adjacent to that particular use case. Finally, I'll recap with the main topics from this presentation and then answer any questions. So with that, hey, let's hop in. Let's have a little bit of fun, right? So from an intros perspective, my name is Jared Matfess. I'm a Senior Solutions Director with Slalom Consulting. Been there for almost 10 years now. I've been a Microsoft MVP for 6 years in the Office Apps and Services category. I frequent speaker up in the New England area, so hopefully some of my friends are going to be viewing this webinar. I'm writing one of the very first books on Microsoft 365 Copilot with a couple of friends. And so, for me, I'm very excited about Gen AI. I'm very bullish on the Copilot brand. And I'm hoping that I either inspire you to learn a little bit more yourself, maybe to build your own little use case, have some fun. And if anything else, hopefully it's a good learning opportunity for you. And finally, despite being incredibly introverted, I do enjoy when people reach out to me on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect. I would love to chat more, geek out on Copilot. And a quick plug just for my employer. So again, I've been with Slalom for about 10 years now. We're a Microsoft partner. We've got capabilities across the 6 solution areas. We've won multiple Partner of the Year awards. We've got really impactful case studies, lots of certified consultants. And so if you need any help with navigating this Copilot craziness or anything else, do not hesitate to reach out. We'd love to bring the positivity and the enthusiasm to you and your organization. So thank you so much, Slalom, for helping support me in this. Okay, let's dive into Microsoft's AI offerings. And so for me, I like to simplify things. I feel like the world is so complex, and if I can simplify messages, simplify items into ways that I can understand and then communicate it, I hope it's helpful for me, and I hope it's helpful for you. So from a story thus far, the two main considerations, two main AI offerings are as follows. There's Microsoft's Azure OpenAI, which is basically taking the OpenAI models and making them available securely within your Microsoft Azure subscription. Now, caveat, there's also this Azure AI Studio where you can go ahead and pull in, open source models like Llama 2, etc. So again, but to keep it simple, there's the Azure called OpenAI or Azure AI Studio. That's where you can go ahead and build your own generative AI application. The skills that you will need to do that are going to be like traditional data engineering, data architect, software engineering, software architect. That is full code to go build out solutions. Next, Microsoft has their Copilot brand, which is essentially Gen AI in all their various software as a service offerings. That includes everything from M365 Copilot to Copilot in Dynamics. They've got a security Copilot. And so think of it as, Copilot as a service or Gen AI as a service. That is their Copilot offering. this is a Copilot talk, and so let's talk about the foundational capabilities of Copilot. And there's really two of them. Again, trying to keep this very simple. One is content creation. So that's, creating copy, creating PowerPoint slides, recommending, suggesting code. And really what these LLMs are doing is it's predicting the next step or the next thing that fits that sequence. And so, content creation is about, creating new content. Then there's content summarization. So being able to go ahead and summarize an email thread, being able to summarize and extract out key information from a Teams meeting transcript, or helping to provide some recommendations on priority or severity, the tone, the sentiment. Content creation, content summarization, those are the two fundamental capabilities that are provided as part of that Microsoft's Copilot brand umbrella of products. So in my role at Slalom, I am a bit of an evangelist. I support our sales processes. I help inform both our sales, our account teams, our delivery teams, as well as I'm chatting with our clients and helping them to navigate what to do next and where to make investments. So for me, again, I'm all about creating these information, these graphics that help summarize or help make it easy to understand. And so it's funny, I over the summer used this slide quite frequently. It's my placemat slide of Microsoft's AI offerings. And it was really with the intent of helping to explain who might use what and how it all comes together. Truth be told, this was a very popular slide. Yeah, it's funny when I go look, people made it their own quite a bit throughout Slalom, and it worked. However, as in true fashion, this slide became outdated very quickly. So the next slide I'm going to show you is circa, January 2024 of what Microsoft's AI offerings look like now. Just take a breath. It's a little bit overwhelming. It's a little bit annoying, but it is what it is. So, boom. It's gotten a little bit more intense. And you notice I had to abandon my really nice and neat, boxes of capabilities, and I reflowed it to match Microsoft's 6 solution areas. So, kind of not sure what that is. Basically, Microsoft has this umbrella of where their services fit. And if you're a managed account and you've got a Microsoft account team, you likely have engaged with technical solution professionals that are deep in each of these different solution areas. And so, for example, modern work, within the modern work solution area, Microsoft has the Microsoft 365 Copilot service offering. They've also got Copilot across the Viva suite, across goals to help, individuals create OKRs using natural language. Or, they've got Copilot in Viva Engage to help leaders, take their strategy documents and help to distill that down into very simple posts that they can go ahead and put within Viva Engage. You've got Copilot in the security stack with both Security Copilot. You can use that to go ahead and create, or use Copilot to create policies or to parse logs or to help identify threats to your organization. There's a Copilot in Azure itself, so being able to use that to navigate your Azure subscription, to figure out what's costing so much, or helping to optimize spend, or helping to design resources, or troubleshooting why things aren't working, using natural language to interact with your Azure subscription. There's also Copilot built into Windows 11 across the application suite, so within the Photos application, Paint, Snipping, Clipchamp, Edge browser. Then there's the ability for you to go ahead and, within the digital application and innovation solution area, that whole Azure AI Studio, talk about building your own Copilot or building your own generative AI applications. Then they've got Copilot as part of GitHub Copilot, where, you can go ahead and leverage generative AI within your software development tooling, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, JetBrains, NeoVim, etc. Under the data and AI solution area, you've got Copilot as part of the Fabric service offering. So, again, Copilot in Power BI to go ahead and ask questions about your data, or to use it to help create very rich data visualizations. Under the business applications umbrella, you've got Copilot across the Dynamics 365 suite, whether it be sales, insights, finance, supply chain, customer service, HR, field service, etc. You've also got Copilot under the Power Platform umbrella, or the Power Platform suite. Basically, using Copilot to create rich low-code applications to help support your users. And we'll talk about Copilot Studio. That's kind of like the main focus of this particular topic or this particular webinar. And then finally, there are also role-specific copilots. So Copilot for Sales, as an example, is for your sellers that allows you to leverage generative AI within your flow of work, whether it be Microsoft Teams or Outlook, to interact with your CRM data, whether it be in Dynamics or within Salesforce.com. And then finally, knowing that there might be some individuals that are watching this webinar that are supporting healthcare life sciences customers. There's the Copilot within the various nuance offerings, including DAX Copilot, which is a huge game changer for clinicians. The value prop there is, imagine, doctors today meeting with their patients, using their phone, opening an application, having the conversation, focusing on the patient, trying to deduce and figure out what is wrong and how they might be able to help support that individual, rather than sitting there taking notes as they're talking to you and having that conversation transcript go speech to text and then summarized and eventually added to the EMR, where all they have to do is review it and not type it all up. Talk about reducing the burden that we're putting on our already overburdened healthcare system. DAX Copilot is totally dope. My prediction 6 months from now is that last slide is going to get even more intense. I also believe that the Copilot confusion is going to continue to persist. But I also think that most organizations will have deployed at least one, if not two, of the various Microsoft Copilot offerings, with plans to scale that even beyond. One of the challenges that I see is navigating this craze of copilots. When everything's a copilot, nothing's a copilot, or you don't know where to start. And the cost of these copilots it's kind of expensive. And IT budgets are not increasing these days. With the current market conditions and still reductions in staff, CIOs and CTOs are being pressured to do more with less. Therefore, the goal or your plan is to look at your organization. Define the people, the personas, map those personas to the various Gen AI offerings. Build your roadmap in terms of who would get the most benefit out of these capabilities. Know that you have finite resources available to deploy and drive adoption. And then finally, that's how you put your whole plan together. Now, you might be saying, Jared, okay, I kind of am following you, but this, persona based, what does that look like? Here you go. Here's an example. So if we look at examples of personas based and building your persona-based roadmap, here's just a smattering. So your developers, they're probably not going to be creating PowerPoint slides. They probably don't really love sending emails. They're more attuned to using Teams or Slack. But they do write code. And so Copilot, as part of their development tooling chain, it's a match made in heaven. So GitHub Copilot is probably perfect for their use case. Your knowledge workers, those are your content creators. They're in Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and Teams all day long. So Microsoft 365 Copilot is a slam dunk for them, because that's going to allow them to quickly create content and summarize content within their flow of work. We touched briefly on sellers. Sales Copilot for Sales, that's a good fit for them, because they're most likely spending time with your customers or your clients. And so their goal is to have those relationships, but also keep people aware of the progression of opportunities. So Copilot for Sales gives them the context of CRM. It also helps streamline the entry and the updating of information to CRM for others to be able to take advantage of. Your security folks, your cyber team, they're going to want to look at Security Copilot, because that allows them to use natural language to create policies, to also query logs, identify threats, and help them to do more with less. Now, your frontline workers, they might need, role-specific copilots, and that might require you to build something. So I look at that as building either a Copilot or a Copilot plugin for them to be able to take advantage of Gen AI within their own flow of work. Your data analysts, on the other hand, they might take advantage of, Copilot within Power BI to use natural language to do some lightweight data engineering work, or to create dashboards, or to ask information about the data that they're analyzing. If you have a contact center, they might be able to take advantage of Copilot within the D365 suite, specifically the Service Copilot. That allows, when someone calls in, to be able to use Copilot to help pull up information about them, help to suggest the next best action, and ultimately how to troubleshoot and resolve that individual's issue as fast as possible. And then finally, your citizen developers are going to love Copilot within the Power Platform suite. That is going to allow them to quickly create apps to fill the gaps using natural language. So lots of benefits across the various personas of your organization. What you need to do is figure out where to start and take this roadmap and put it up against the timeline, look at the budget, and build a plan for how to drive this within your organization. Okay, I'm going to talk about Copilot Studio. So when I think about Microsoft and what they're doing, ultimately they are evolving how people are going to work. From clicks to conversations, this is going to be the future of work and the future of user interfaces. It's going to be natural language. And so what Copilot Studio, for example, allows you to do, it's like that first big step is you can extend one of the existing first-party Copilots, whether it be Microsoft 365 Copilot, Copilot for Sales, etc., or to build your own standalone Copilot that is fit for purpose. The benefit of Copilot Studio is that it's built upon the foundation of Microsoft's Power Platform offering. Therefore, if you are currently building Power Apps today, and you've got the Power Platform COE implemented, and you have governance and operating model around that, you are already way ready for Copilot Studio. And that's fantastic. To click into what it is. So Copilot Studio is a full low-code development platform. It used to be Microsoft Virtual Agents, but Microsoft has made significant investments in it to help make it even better. Again, to be able to extend existing Copilots or to build your fit-for-purpose ones. And so you click into it, it's really that single pane of glass. You can create specific topics to formulate answers. You can go ahead and create actions. So, having a person use natural language to go complete an activity, to submit workday feedback, to go ahead and pull a pay stub, to go ahead and do an inventory check, to go ahead and let page a nursing supervisor, etc. Some of the really cool things about Copilot Studio is you have that one view in terms of the telemetry of how people are using it. It also integrates with all of the full code capabilities within Microsoft's AI suite, whether it be cognitive services, the bot framework, etc. And then finally, when you build one of these Copilots, it's build once, publish many. Meaning you can go ahead and leverage these Copilots in Facebook, in Slack, in Twilio, in Microsoft 365 Copilot as a plugin, within Teams as a bot, within your website. So it's really powerful being able to build once and publish across your various channels. Now you might be like, Jared, how much does this thing cost? So, funny you might ask. Microsoft Copilot Studio is not a per user per month, but rather it is a messages cost. And so for $200 US per month, you have access to 25,000 messages to be able to engage with these. Let's stop using the Copilot word for a minute. Let's just say from a bot perspective, each message to that bot, every time you query it, that counts against that 25,000 quota. So what you'll do when you go ahead and design, plan your use case, do a little bit of forecasting, you pilot it, you measure, you monitor, and then you figure out, are there ways to help drive fewer conversations or fewer queries, etc. And to get really meta for a moment, there's a Copilot inside of Microsoft 365 Copilot Studio. Basically, again, as I mentioned, Copilot Studio is really a low-code platform for you to build out your own custom Copilot or to extend one. And so using Copilot within it, you can basically use natural language to explain what you're trying to create, and it'll start to pull together the various artifacts that are needed, variable initialization, actions, etc., to further help you to build that particular use case within your environment. Okay. I knew that was a little bit fast, and I was really just trying to give you a quick hit around, what Copilot Studio is. Hopefully that was a good primer, a good 101. But I think to make it real, it'd be helpful to talk through, a particular use case. And so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to talk through this healthcare use case that I've been working on. So, as a quick background, navigating our U.S. healthcare system is really tough. And, I've found that for myself, someone that is relatively tech savvy, it's still challenging. If you if you require seeing a specialist, there's a huge wait time to be able to see them. And a lot of times they float across various locations. For some things that you might want to see a specialist for, you might have preferences. It might be a gender preference, it might be a location preference, it might be a language preference, and navigating those preferences is kind of challenging, not just for you as someone that's advocating, or you as someone that's trying to find help for a close loved one, but it's also hard on the providers themselves trying to help position the right specialist or the right person that'll best fit the patient need. Again, if you're a contact center person or someone that is working the phone system, it's challenging. When I thought about what I went through last year, needing to take advantage of specialists, needing to go and work through some things, I also married that with maybe there's a way that I could look at Gen AI and use that to help perhaps make my own experience a little bit better. And so what I did is I set forward my own learning goals. I wanted to learn how to build a custom Gen AI application. I wanted to use Azure OpenAI because I sit in the Microsoft ecosystem. When I looked at building an AI application, I didn't want to have to go and learn a new language. I wanted to take advantage of some of the low-code tools. And I wanted to be able to create this use case and publish it so I could both benefit from it personally, but just share what's possible, especially for someone that might not be super technical. So for me, I'm an old school SharePoint developer, a bit of front-end developer, JavaScript, jQuery. I'm familiar with making REST calls. I did a lot of SharePoint 2013 development. I've built automated business processes with SharePoint Designer workflows and Power Automate flows. I don't have any experience with creating Azure infrastructure as code or Terraform or anything like that. And really transparently, I can get a little bit vulnerable here. I don't have a lot of database experience. I understand, structured data, but I don't. I'm relational databases, but I don't have a ton of experience beyond that. So for me, that was my starting point. When I was thinking about how do I build a Gen AI application, I went through all my internal Slalom training and Microsoft Learn training. One of the things I was really worried about was how do I ensure that I'm doing so, building this application responsibly. And in the beginning too, when Gen AI was first popping, that was a huge it was and still is a huge focus, and it was hard to navigate. What does that mean? How does responsible AI fit within use cases? And so I looked at various patterns that are available, and so ultimately, I decided on this retrieval augmentation generation pattern. So it's an architecture that augments the capabilities of LLMs like ChatGPT but it has this information retrieval system that provides grounding for the data. And basically, what that means is the retrieval, it gives you control over what the LLM uses to formulate a response. So you're not giving it full freedom to make decisions. And for me, that was very helpful because I don't want AI to decide the provider. I want logic and what the user's asking for to do that. And so this pattern works out really well for that. I mean, is there still potential for hallucinations? Yes. But it's kind of limited. And so when it does hallucinate, it's actually just going to throw an error for the application and not provide a bad recommendation. And for me, that feels like the right thing, given the sensitivity around what people might be using or might be querying, for this particular use case. In terms of what you're going to need to get started from an access and services perspective, you will need an Azure subscription, and you're going to need to be able to create a resource group and provision resources within it. This is not a heavy application, so if you have a trial or a dev environment for Azure, for Azure, yeah, that's perfect. For access to Copilot Studio, you just need a trial. This, if this is just for you to play around with, to go ahead and build your use case, and the trial is fine. You will 100% need access to Google and YouTube as you get, hopefully. I hope I was pretty close at documenting all the steps, but if you run into issues, you most likely will use Google and YouTube to troubleshoot. So that's what you need to get started. I think enough already. I've been in PowerPoint for 25 minutes. Let's go ahead and show you the demo. So here I am in Copilot Studio, and you can see I've got my Matfess GPT which is my own custom copilot that I built. And it's more or less a chatbot, but here's kind of the fun. So I'm going to go ahead and paste, I'm looking for a male urologist in New York. So just as an example, we talked about there, sometimes you might look for a specialist, you might have a preference. And so for me, I'm looking for, male urologist in New York. Boom, it gave me a nice list of 5 different specialists that I might be able to go ahead and contact. All right, that's one. Let's go ahead and do a quick refresh. Let's do another one. So again, you just to show that's not like hard coded. So I'm looking for a female cardiologist in Hartford. So let's go ahead and ask the chatbot that. Here, it's going to send it. It's going to think, and then in a second, hopefully, it's going to come back with some results. And there it is. So you've got Olga Tora over at the Connecticut Children's. I live in Connecticut, so these are valid organizations, most likely valid providers. Now they're send something a little bit different. So again, those are 2 kind of common prompts. This is me sending in Italian, and I believe it's Italian. I use Google Translate to confirm it, but it's basically saying I'm looking for a male cardiologist in Newark. And so what I like about this is I wrote no code to make this happen. Like there was no effort of me translating or figuring out additional logic or anything like that. But because I'm using Azure OpenAI, it's going to go ahead and take what I sent, and it's going to be able to convert that. Oops, sending failed. But then it worked. It's a little bit funny, right? And I like to show because sometimes this stuff does happen. But as you see, it found 33 providers that are cardiologists, male cardiologists in Newark, and it allowed the user to go ahead and use the language that they're familiar with or that comes natural to them to be able to request help. And I think that's super powerful. I've been doing IT for a long time now, and addressing multiple languages is tough. And again, the cool thing about generative AI and these large language models is they're trained on languages, and they're able to infer and get at like what your intent is. And that's what makes this technology just incredibly powerful. So that was my demo, and I know there's probably ways of making this look more attractive and different UI and different capabilities. But I built this thing in like less than 2 days. A lot of the work was this final last mile of getting the presentation of the providers to look semi nice. And sure, if I had more skills, I could make this even more impactful. But I want to talk to you about how I built this, the services that I used, and how it all came together, because I think that tells a pretty compelling story around what the capabilities of this technology is. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into PowerPoint and show off some of the slides. So first, from a data set perspective, I went and grabbed the national downloadable file of all the providers, it's clinicians with Medicare enrollment records. It's a CSV file of like 600 megs. And so, this data.cms.gov is a treasure trove of data sets if you want to go ahead and build out similar use cases. So I definitely would go check that out. If you want to go ahead and take a look, like, it's again, 600 megs is kind of heavy, but this is a glimpse at what's inside of that. You've got the providers' names, you've got their genders, their credentials, their medical school that they went to, their primary specialty, the facility that they worked at, the address of that facility, city, state, zip, telephone number, all that. So there's a lot of really helpful information that's available as part of this data set. And it definitely, what I showed you is just a small, sliver of what's possible with a little bit of work. From an Azure resources perspective, this is it. These are all the various components or services that I provisioned to bring this application to life. Again, there was the Copilot that I built within Copilot Studio, and Copilot Studio connects and leverages these Azure resources to bring the whole thing together into one final packaged application. So from a database perspective, I provisioned Azure SQL database to my Matfess demo Azure resource group. I then used this tool called Azure Data Studio and there's an extension that I had to go and import to be able to add it to Data Studio to be able to import that CSV file into the database. And if you would like to follow step by step, there's instructions that are provided from that website there included as part of the slides. So watch the video, check the slides, you'll be able to follow along and build that yourself. After I went ahead and imported that data set, I just did a really quick select statement to go pull records just to show you that here it is. Here's my data loaded into my Azure SQL database. So now I've got data set in Azure SQL. I need to figure out how to be able to reason over that data. And so, at the time of building it, it was called Azure Cognitive Search. Now it's called Azure AI Search. But what it does is it's a search service that indexes that content. So, basically you create a new data source with an Azure Cognitive Search. You go point it at your Azure SQL database. You gotta wait. I think it took a couple hours to go ahead and index that content. And I followed the step-by-step instructions that are part of that Microsoft Learn link. Or there's a learning module for you to follow along with. But essentially, it is just again created Azure SQL database. Imported the data set from the CSV file, created a new instance of Azure Cognitive Search or Azure AI Search. I built a new data source. I pointed at Azure SQL. I let it index, and then boom, you can go ahead and test. And so, as a super simple test, I just wrote the words nurse in Pittsburgh. And you can go ahead and look at the JSON that's provided or sent back to you. That first parameter, that ampersand search.score, that's telling you that from an Azure AI search perspective, that's from, again, using its intelligence there, it's recommending that should be the very first record. That one hits and is closest to what the user is most likely looking for. Therefore, it's got the highest score. And you can see all the various parameters that it provides back about that particular provider, right? You can see the primary specialty is nurse practitioner. You can see the organization name, University of Pittsburgh Physicians, right? City, Pittsburgh, etc. So this helps you know that Azure AI Search is working, and that everything, so you don't have to worry about troubleshooting that. And here's all the data that it's able to pull back. Next, you want to go ahead and provision an instance of the Azure OpenAI service. So for me, I just provisioned an instance of GPT-3.5 Turbo. It's fine. You don't got to pay more for anything else. It's fine. It provisions very quickly. You don't have to worry about which data center, which region, blah, blah, blah. No. This is exactly what I used. It was fine for the use case. What's helpful to know is you got to go back into the Azure OpenAI Azure portal to go ahead and get access to these two key things. The key, basically that's what you need to be able to use to authenticate to that instance that you just created of that Azure OpenAI model. And then you need to have that endpoint for when you make the REST call to go ahead and reason to get back the list of providers. So those are the two things you're going to need, and we'll show you where. Next, you're going to want to go ahead and create an instance of Azure Key Vault. And so, again, I recognize this is a POC, but I think it's good to have an end in mind of having something that's enterprise ready. And so when you create this instance of Azure Key Vault, you're going to store two secrets, which are basically the API keys for those two services we created, the Azure AI Search or Azure Cognitive Search, and then also the Azure OpenAI service. And what's interesting is I really thought I had to create keys, but the terminology is different. So basically a key from an Azure Key Vault perspective is it's a PFX file, a certificate file, whereas a secret is a text-based string that you're going to go ahead and store. So again, create the Azure Key Vault, create two secrets, Azure Cog Search, Azure OpenAI, good to go. Now, next we're going to go ahead and build the Copilot in Microsoft Copilot Studio. And just preface, when I first built this use case, it was considered a Power Virtual Agent. So they didn't have all that fancy Copilot stuff just yet. It was a couple months ago. But during Ignite 2023, Satya announced that Power Virtual Agents is becoming Copilot Studio. And so there's really a mix of both Gen AI and classic Power Virtual Agents functionality that exists within the service. It's going to continue to evolve over time as Microsoft makes further investments. But I just want to preface that's how this is all coming together. So what you'll do is you'll go into Copilot Studio, and you're going to click on Copilots on the left-hand side and click New Copilot, and you're going to call it something. Call it Microsoft HLS Copilot, whatever name you want to call for this particular Copilot. There's a foundational concept that I want to make you aware of, and it's called topics. And basically, A topic is it's a portion of a conversation that you're going to define. It's looking for triggers of what's going to invoke that topic, whether it be a word or phrase, etc., that someone is going to say. And within that topic is conversational nodes and logic and action. So basically, when someone says something, it invokes that topic, and all the logic within it then gets processed. So just from like an application development perspective, that's how topics fit in. To keep it simple, for this use case, I have just one topic, and I'm leaving the trigger open, or blank, meaning anytime somebody interacts with this copilot or this chatbot, it's going to invoke this default topic. And my first step that I do is I check to see if global.chat, which is a variable, is blank. It means that someone has not sent a message to this copilot yet. This is the first invocation of this chatbot, and I'm going to set that global.chat to include a system message. And so, yet again, another super important concept. So, when you are starting down your Gen AI journey, starting to tinker with LLMs, a system message is the context as part of the prompt where you're telling the large language model what your expectations are, how it should behave. What are some examples of data that you're looking as part of the response back? Defining the tone, defining what it should and shouldn't do, and the format of the responses. So I'm going to show you what the system message is that I included as part of this use case. So I basically saying generate an Azure Cognitive Search query based on the user question. The expected statement should follow this format: primary specialty, ampersand, and city, and gender, and organization name. I'm basically trying to get a search query that I can then send to Azure AI Search to have it go ahead, leverage the RAG pattern to give me back the providers that best match what the user is looking for. So search is making the call, AI is not. What I'm saying is there are fields in that data set. There's primary specialty, which should be the type of healthcare provider. So some examples of what a person might ask for are a doctor, a nurse, a physical therapy, radiology, surgery. And I'm telling it that if a user says they're looking for a radiologist, please change it to radiology. Or therapist, change it to therapy, or cardiologist, change to cardiology. And the reason is, if you remember from the data set, the clinician, the provider, their specialty is radiology, but their title is radiologist. So likely a person is saying, I'm looking for a radiologist, not looking for radiology. And then I specify that there's a field called city. I gave some examples of cities. I give some examples of languages, as well as some organizational names such as Hartford Healthcare, Mass General Brigham, Yale Medical, Middlesex Health, etc. Just again to feed the LLM and set better expectations of what I'm looking for. And then finally, I've included some formatting to get rid of special characters, etc., because I want to be able to easily pass this back to Azure AI Search to retrieve back answers. So again, a lot of information. Slides will be available if you want to copy and paste, but I just wanted to step you through the why behind all this. The next step is to go ahead and set some. I'm concatenating the global.chat with the user content. I'm making some changes. I'm basically formatting the variable here to get ready for the next step. After that, I'm calling a Power Automate action, and the high level just logic flow is I'm going to take the user prompt. I'm going to send it to Azure OpenAI to get the intent. That response back, I'm going to format and then send it to Azure AI Search to get the provider values. And I'm going to present that response back to the users in the flow that they expect. So this is actually just another way of looking at it. So the Power Virtual Agents is the trigger. The message is sent to this Power Automate flow. Step 2, I go get a secret, which I'm basically going into the Azure Key Vault to get the API key to send to Azure OpenAI Search. I then create some more variables. I initialize some variables. I then go ahead, make a second HTTP call, which is calling that Azure AI Search endpoint. I'm reasoning over, for high level, reasoning over the responses back, formatting it, presenting that back to Power Virtual Agent aka Copilot Studio to eventually present that information or that result back to the user to go ahead and take action upon. So to step you through like what I'm doing, that call Azure OpenAI, I'm making it as a post within the messages area of the body. If you see there's some JSON, I'm concatenating a couple of strings together to make it all flow. You notice I can leverage the value of the API key up in the header section. That's how I'm able to make that call to the Azure OpenAI search. The Azure OpenAI endpoint. And it's a post because I'm posting information to go get a response back, which could be the parameters. If you go and look at an example run of that, so I posted the message that the user, or that I, as the user, was sending. I was looking for a male urology, I should put urologist, whatever, in New York. It's able to see that you're able to see like that. Like that's the what I sent to the LLM, and that's the I guess call it the input into that. Here is the output of that action within the Power Automate flow. And if you look, the message coming back, the content is kind of the important part. You can see I'm starting to formulate that search query. So you've got the pri_spec equals, or ampersand urology, colon city New York, gender male. So it basically took the text, that natural language prompt that I sent to it, and it extracted out and formatted based on the data set that we have in Azure SQL. Again, I'm going to initialize a couple of variables. The response, I'm pulling at the JSON that came back and formatting that, so I've got that primary specialty in a nice string. For the initialize the items to return, that's just saying like only show. I'm capping how many items to show back in the in the chatbot window. So otherwise you're going to have like a whole scrolling situation. So if you want to see, you can show 5, you can show 3, you can show 2, and that list of doctors variable is a string. It's just, again, it's going to contain all the formatted values of the first 5 providers that I'm going to share with the user. So hopefully that made sense. Next, I'm going to go ahead and call the Azure AI search endpoint. I want to call it 2 things. One, I messed up and I chose not to fix it. On the API key, it's whited out because I accidentally forgot to have the second step to go call Azure Key Vault to get the key. So I actually had hard-coded the key in there. But when you go to production, don't do that. And the second thing is that when you see the preview, see Matfess-cog-search, Windows, etc., that's the endpoint for Azure AI search. And that ampersand search equals, that's me passing in the search parameter to go ahead and pull back the providers that would match the what the user is looking for. So basically it's got that pri_spec equals urology, gender equals male, etc. That's what's keeping appended to that URL string. It's a get because I'm basically getting the results. More variables, the message back to bot, and then body for the search response is what was returned from Azure AI search. I'm going to parse that JSON. So again, you're going to see, like as an example from cognitive search or from AI search, Jeffrey Lessing, primary specialty urology, NYU, New York, etc. So hopefully, I don't know, Jeffrey, if you're watching, keep doing the great work that you're doing. Next, in my logic, I'm double checking that the length is greater than 1, meaning that based on what the user is searching for, that they found more than one provider. Otherwise, you want to provide some sort of error that, hey, couldn't figure out what you're looking for, please try again. Assuming that it did found results, I use that parse JSON to get the number of results back, so I can present to the user how many I found. I'm using the take function to go ahead and select the top items. The top, basically, here's the top 5 it's basically, especially the items return is 5. So extract out the first 5, present that in the chatbot, and then finally in the append to string variable block, that's me formatting back first name, last name, the organization name that provider works at, the address, the city, state, and etc. So that's how I'm pulling together, iterates over all the results, and it pulls together that string, which will ultimately get presented back to the user. Formatting that response back to the Copilot, you can see I'm putting this all together. I found outputs is how many providers have found, with a maximum of 50. Here are, and from an items return perspective, you're trimming up to at least 5. And then trim, I removed some of the white space, so you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, message back to bot. This is a run of it. I found 50 more providers. Here are 5. Here's Jeffrey Lessing, one of the first in the list, based on him matching Azure AI Search, thinking he should be the first one that's presented. And then finally, a lot of talking. This is me, returning the value back to Power Virtual Agents. I'll have to format it one more time, and then we'll present it back to the user. Okay, so that last step, and if you asked what does it all mean, it took a lot of troubleshooting, but basically was a little bit of concatenating formatting to get the response back to the user, so that if you notice that set variable global.chat to, I'm going to set it to that assistant, and then it's going to ultimately present that back to the user. I set the global.chat variable so that removes some of the white space, makes it basically I'm presenting back to it the content then formatted from Power Automate. So there's that. Okay, so that was my example. I'm going to say that was probably not a production-ready application, but it is an example of what's possible without code. I also really think that Copilot Studio is going to be an absolute game changer when it comes to building these Gen AI applications, because you're really empowering low-code developers to have access to some really cool tech, and they are most likely closer to some of the business problems that your organization might be facing. I recognize that this is a mix of show and tell and how I built. Certainly, if you run into issues, for sure, hit me up. I'm hoping that most of the issues that I personally ran into building this was like formatting the responses, like understanding those various different variable formatting functions. That was the hardest part of this, but like building that logic wasn't too bad. I hope this inspired you. I recognize that there might be attendees here that are more attuned to, full code development, but hopefully I've shown you that us low code developers can do some pretty cool stuff. So again, I am super appreciative of anyone who took the time to listen to me talk. I'm really hopeful that I inspired you to go build something cool, and thank you for your time. Thank you, Microsoft HLS team, for giving me the platform to go share what I've been working on, and to all have a fantastic new year. Thanks again. Take care. Bye.